All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and today we're going to be talking about the Season 3 finale of The Mandalorian, Chapter 24, The Return. And before I jump into the review, I want to start on a more positive note because the review is going to be pretty negative overall, but I do want to thank you guys for the constant support on all of my thoughts episodes throughout this season. And this is going to be the first time in a while since all the way back at Andor that I won't be giving you guys weekly reviews of things because we went right from Andor to Bad Batch to Mandalorian. So I want to thank you guys for sticking with me on all of those. If you listen to a couple episodes, if you just listen to some of my commentary on specific shows, I just wanted to thank you guys for the support. I love talking to you guys about Star Wars, obviously, and all of these shows and your thoughts on them just as much as talking about my thoughts. So wanted to thank you guys up front. And now to the ugly part of the episode. Now, Season 3 finale was not terrible by any stretch of the imagination. There were some good moments, but it was nowhere near the level of quality that the Season 1 or Season 2 finale was, and that's disappointing because Season 3, I think, was the most hyped up season of The Mandalorian between all of the actors and the directors. They really said, oh, we have a bigger scale, a bigger scope. We're going to deliver like we never have before. And I just don't think that was true. And unfortunately, I think that was a reoccurring theme this season, that it felt like more they were trying to sell us the show instead of the show being very inspired. And while I do think there is some of that hangover from the fact that they shoehorned the Mandalorian episodes into the Book of Boba Fett, and I still think that was a huge mistake, and that's a reason that we probably got a lot more filler content this season, because I feel that those two episodes in the Book of Boba Fett should have been the beginning and should have been plot lines in this season of The Mandalorian. I think that would have elevated this season, obviously, but aside from that hangover, I still think the writing throughout this season has been extremely inconsistent, uncreative, and just flat out bad and convenient sometimes. And I hate to say it, but I feel like the finale is one of the biggest offenders when it comes to bad, uncreative writing. This whole episode summed up in one word for me would be rushed. And I don't blame that on the runtime at all. If you have a story that's only going to take up a certain amount of time, that's fine. Don't overextend to just fill time. But the pacing in this episode, the writing in this episode just felt like it was in a rush to get somewhere else. It was in a rush to get to the ending. I mean, the beginning of this episode, all of the tension that was built up at the end of last week's episode of Mando being captured and taken away for questioning or torture was pretty much dispatched within the first 5 minutes because he breaks away from two guards. Why Gideon only had two guards assigned to him, I don't know. They had an entire base of Imperials, and this is a very important target to him. And before you can catch your breath, Grogu shows up, so he broke away from Bo-Katan, and Bo-Katan doesn't even acknowledge that. Bo-Katan kind of just leaves with all the Mandalorians. It would have been so much more impactful if Grogu gave Bo-Katan a look to say, hey, I need to go save my dad, and Bo-Katan and him kind of have a moment where she's like, go ahead and save your dad. But no, they kind of just brush over that, like Grogu just splits off from the other Mandalorians and somehow finds Din immediately. Then while Din is moving throughout this entire complex, Moff Gideon apparently knows exactly where he is, but instead of going after him, he goes out on the landing platform away from his clones, which are apparently so precious to him. Why he wouldn't watch where Mando's going and say, oh my gosh, he's going for my clones, and go to that room and defend that room with the three Praetorian guards that you were so adamant about having with you in the last Imperial Remnant meeting. And speaking of the clones are introduced and then destroyed in the same breath. Mando walks into the room, already knows the cloning's going on, and says, oh, okay, I need to get rid of all this. Like, he knew exactly what was going on in here. So the clones are then wiped away. That whole plot line or plot thread is just gone. And while all this is going on, remember, Gideon is just standing outside on the landing platform with his three Praetorian guards just hiding in a closet somewhere, waiting to make a slow motion entrance, because that's apparently all they do now. So then Mando goes out on the landing platform, and him and Moff Gideon are going to have this epic standoff, but then Moff Gideon gives this really cartoonish line, and they really squander Giancarlo Esposito here and give him this line where he's like, I was supposed to wield the Force, and my clones were unable to breathe their first breath. Like, it takes a lot of effort to make the greatest TV villain actor sound that cartoonish through writing, and that's how he came off here. And then another convenience comes into play. Him and Mando fight, but he has this Praetorian Guard staff that he only brings out later when he fights Bo. Maybe that's a nitpick. Maybe it was just I need to prove I'm better than Mando with my own bare hands before I pull this out, but he could have easily dispatched Mando with that right away. While all this is going on, Axe Wolves flies directly from the surface all the way to a ship in the low atmosphere. I didn't realize that the Mandalorians could fly into space. I know their suits are pressurized, and I know clone suits have it, so it's really not that big of a deal, but we've just never seen it before, that a Mando just goes directly from the ground all the way into the atmosphere. I feel like there would be some like ice crystallization that would go onto the armor, but that doesn't happen because we're just in a rush to get going. So then the Mandalorians go down and the Imperial fighters go up. I thought that was actually a pretty cool scene where they kind of both pass each other without knowing it because of the whole cloud system that's above the planet. I thought that was pretty cool. But then when we get up to the space battle, there isn't much of a battle. It's just Axe Wolves versus all of these people, even though it felt like the Mandalorian fleet was bigger. And when you watch the end of the episode, something I noticed was if you watch the concept art, you see that there was supposed to be a big space battle, but it just didn't come to fruition. I guess they ran out of budget, ran out of time. I don't know, but it seemed like the intention was that there would be a space battle. So again, that felt rushed or incomplete. We do get a cool scene of Bo-Katan and all the Mandalorians jumping out of the ship and flying down into the cave to take on the Imperial Beskar troopers, and that's a pretty cool sequence where there's just jetpacks flying into each other. It's a lot going on, and I like when they do that zoom in shaky cam on some of the main characters, like the armor using her tongs to just destroy these different troopers by smacking them in the face, which is definitely more effective than what they were using their blasters for, because as we've seen, the Beskar armor sometimes stops blaster bolts, but other times it doesn't. We really don't know what is a lethal shot with the Beskar. That's what I talked about last week, why I don't really like what they've done with Beskar in the Mando show. It's just very plainly obvious in these past couple episodes because it's Beskar on Beskar crime. I do have to give an apology to the armorer. She beat all of her allegations. A lot of people were calling her a spy, and I do think it was warranted. I do think there was some good build-up around that. I did feel like there was some interesting interactions throughout this season where it's like, what is she really getting at here? But she was always for the cause, which I'm totally fine with. I like what the armorer represented, and that would have sucked if it turned around and she was on the Imperial side the whole time. So I like that she wasn't a traitor. But again, that takes away some of the surprise or some of the twists and turns of the finale, because the finale pretty much plays it by the book throughout. There's no real surprises in this finale, which is another bummer. But then we go back down to Din and Grogu's fight against Moff Gideon. Din gets overrun by the Praetorian guards, and then Grogu pops out and says, no, 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 with the IG-12 suit. And all of the Praetorian guards decide that they don't need to keep killing Din. They need to destroy this cumbersome robot with a baby in it. So all three of them then go directly to the Grogu, like he is the biggest threat on Earth. And while there is a nice portrayal of Din here where he screams like, no, he's so scared for what will happen to Grogu, again, it's kind of undercut for like, why would they do that? Why would the Praetorian guards do that? Why would Moff Gideon let them do that? They have the real threat right in front of them. And then again, we get this awkward choreography where IG-12, sorry, is so cumbersome as a moving unit that the Praetorian guards are moving towards him and he's backing up so slowly, and these Praetorian guards don't just attack him, they like slowly corner him, and it's so badly choreographed that you're just looking at it like, why wouldn't they just attack immediately? Like, there's no way this thing is mobile enough to dodge what they're doing. So in the end, IG-12 was just a weird addition to this whole season because it was very cumbersome. I liked the comedic aspect of it, but in this scene, it just proves that there was like no plan with it, I guess, because it's dead by the end. But it felt like a very Leia chase through the forest scene where these Praetorian guards just didn't close the distance and take out Grogu. They just conveniently go very slowly, like, oh, he's backing up really fast. I can't get him. And then these same Praetorian guards who were so cool last week now can't take down Grogu, which I like the idea that he's moving like Yoda, but the practical effects look very odd to me. I love the practical effects in Star Wars, but in scenes like this where it's supposed to be very action-packed, it's very awkward to see the doll just kind of being thrown up and moved slowly across the rafters here. You almost want to see that CGI Yoda that they got in Attack of the Clones. Maybe not that, intense with all the flips and the screams, but maybe just a little CGI here would have worked. So then Bo shows up to help out Din, and she's like, go save your kid. Din gives her a little nod. He goes in, and then Bo and Moff Gideon have this fight, which was well choreographed. I enjoyed it. Again, the Beskar kind of makes all the blows with the Darksaber very uninteresting. There wasn't any like cuts or bruises. She didn't get him in any of like the weak points of his armor. So it was kind of like, oh, okay, they're just kind of smacking each other with things. And in this fight, Moff Gideon ends up destroying the Darksaber, which I think is a good move. I think that was what this season was working towards, that the Darksaber isn't the end-all be-all for who should lead Mandalore. It should be someone with honor, integrity, who can lead others. By destroying it and taking that decision out of her hand, I feel like we miss a huge character moment where either she had it knocked out of her hand and she looks at it and she looks at Moff Gideon and says, I don't need that Darksaber to be the rightful ruler of Mandalore. I can beat you on my own and with the other Mandalorians. That's just a symbol, but it doesn't define me. I think that would have been a lot more impactful than her having her hand crushed around it and being like, oh, you don't have the Darksaber anymore. I know it kind of comes back around, I think, a few moments later when she's like, Mandalorians are stronger together. And that's another theme of this season, that, you know, they're so split up. They're so worried about different ideologies and they're always butting heads. And that's the only way Mandalore falls. So them coming together is cool, but again, the person that she's coming together with is someone that she was already friends with and who didn't care about all that squabbling. So Din was always on her side, but it would have been cool if, you know, other Mandalorians that maybe she didn't see eye to eye with came down and helped. It just felt like it should have been a bigger moment, and I just didn't feel that it was the culmination of all of these years of hardship on Mandalore and all the things that Bo's been through. I feel like that decision should have been hers. I know I kind of skipped over it, but I do want to say that I enjoyed Grogu and Din working together against the Praetorian Guards. I like Grogu pushing away their weapons, having Din's back with the Force. I enjoyed all of those aspects of the fight, and hopefully that is integrated more and more in the next couple seasons where they're really partners instead of Grogu just like saving the day at the end with the Force push or something like that. So I enjoyed the father-son fighting dynamic here. So then Din and Bo kind of back Moff Gideon up to the edge of the landing platform, and the ship that Axe Wolves was in is destroyed, so it's coming down hard into the ravine to destroy the Imperial base. I thought that was like a good idea, but again, Moff Gideon just kind of stands at the edge. He has a jetpack, and the ship is falling behind him, but he doesn't have like the wherewithal to jump away. It just felt very awkward that he would just like stand there and take it when he had like time to move. I don't know. Again, it just felt very lazy to be like, oh, I've been backed up so far and the ship's right here. Oh, I have no urge to live anymore. Oh, I'm going to die now. And then he bursts into flames. I don't know. I like Grogu with the Kanan callback here where he blocks the flame. Bo-Katan coming in to like save him with her shield. That was really cute. Din obviously being there with his son. All of that was nice. I liked them all working together as a unit there, but again, the Moff Gideon death just felt very weird. People are speculating that that was just a clone. God forbid Star Wars does this again and says, "Oh, that was a clone. He's really alive," because they say his mustache was shaved, so this is a different person. So if he came back, I would just be like, "Oh my God, are we really doing this?" But another part of me is like, oh, we really squandered Giancarlo Esposito here and really squandered Moff Gideon this season. It would be nice to see him come back and be competent, but I don't want them to go back on this death. Who knows if they will. And so this Imperial ship crashes, and every single Imperial in this base apparently dies, and every Mandalorian that fought apparently lives. Like, there's no post-battle falling action here. They kind of just cut to the next scene where they're all at the forge and the forge is lit again and you see all of these Mandalorians that survived the battle. Like, we have no idea what the casualty and what the cost was. The only representation of that is Paz Vizsla dying, which, I mean, yeah, it was a loss, but you would think there would be like a vigil for all of the heroes that died to retake Mandalore here, all the clans that finally came together and put aside their differences to save Mandalore. It felt very hollow, like there was no consequences to anything that had just happened, like it went off without a hitch. I mean, they lost the big Imperial ship that they had, but at the end of the day, the lives are what really mattered. And speaking of loss, we see Paz Vizsla's kid get anointed in the living waters, and there's just no conversation that his dad died taking back Mandalore. Why wouldn't we have a character moment here with Din going up to him and being like, hey, I respected your father. The armorer coming up to him and being like, your father has been a part of this clan for so long and he would be proud of what he saw today. Just like there was no falling action here. So this kid just like lost his dad and they're just like, no, we're just going to brush over that. He's anointed. He's good now. That felt very weird to me. And then we get a scene that is supposed to be very emotional and they try and make it feel like it's this big moment where Din officially adopts Grogu, but it's not like this is a surprise. It's not like he ever expressed any feelings that he didn't want to ever adopt him, or that throughout this season he didn't refer to the kid as his own, or that Bo-Katan didn't refer to it as his own. So this kind of felt like a hollow scene too. Have I done a good job at making this feel like a rushed episode? Because it very much was, and I kind of just dove right in and gave you all the plot points, but that's how the episode felt to me. The positives, I know I went right through with all the negatives first, but the positives were I did like the kind of ray shield fight scene with Mando kind of working his way one by one through the gauntlet to take out these troopers. I thought that was really cool. I thought the choreography was awesome. He really reminded us that he is this badass bounty hunter that we knew in season 1. I also enjoyed the ending and how it seems like they're going to do like a soft reboot of the show, and now Din's going to go back to being a bounty hunter, but now he's going to be working for the New Republic and hunting down Imperial remnants, which I think is a cool concept, and it feels like it's going to fit into that adventure of the week format that made the show so successful, but also it'll be a little more focused because now we're fighting an enemy, a bad guy. Like it isn't just I'm taking this job, going here, doesn't matter if it's good or bad, I'm just going to do the job. Like we're actually fighting for good. So I think that's pretty cool. We have some opportunities to see more of the New Republic, the inner workings of the Imperial Amnesty Program. Maybe we'll see some more Zeb. Maybe we'll have Mando kind of towing the line between the Outer Rim and the Unknown Region, so maybe he gets involved in the Ahsoka plotline. Again, we know Thrawn is going to eventually lead the Imperial remnants, so that's going to come to Din and Grogu eventually down the road, but I feel like next season is going to be very much in the vein of season 1, which I'm looking forward to and is definitely surprising for me because I was always looking forward to Mando kind of focusing up its story, but unfortunately this season I don't think it was the best representation of what I wanted because, again, it felt rushed. The writing wasn't on par with what it was. It felt very lazy, uncreative. It seems like corners were cut, especially with the space battle this episode. Some of the cuts between scenes just felt very rapid, like there was something about to happen or they had more footage, but they were like, nope, we got to cut it right here. And so while I was entertained by the finale, it didn't exactly bring me any emotions that I thought it would or it should have, with Mandalorians finally retaking Mandalore as a united front. It especially didn't feel as good as when it did in Rebels when Sabine gave Bo-Katan the Darksaber. And I'm just very curious as to what happened this season. I know there was definitely episodes I enjoyed a lot. I think there was those episodes that recaptured the magic, but I think overall it was a very hollow season, unfortunately. And I'm very curious to see how that came about and why it came about at such a pivotal point in the show. Maybe it was the growing pains of having this focus story instead of the adventure of the week. Maybe it was something else. I don't know. I think it all stems from that Book of Boba Fett decision. And I'm going to compare Mando to Andor here, and I know that's like a cardinal sin. You don't compare these Star Wars shows, these two Star Wars shows that represent two types of Star Wars, very gritty and grounded and very light and fun. But I want to compare them in the fact that Andor just felt much more intentional in its storytelling. Things mattered. Things were happening for a reason. But this season of Mando felt like the exact opposite. And when we say we want shows more like Andor, it doesn't mean we want every show to feel like Andor. We want shows to have the level of thought, care, and writing that Andor had. And this season of The Mandalorian really makes me scared for future seasons of Star Wars TV, because this is the flagship. This was supposed to be the rock. This was supposed to be the constant in Star Wars TV. No matter what you thought about the other shows, you could always go back to The Mandalorian, and that would be your safe space. But after this season, I don't know about that. And it makes me nervous for Ahsoka. Even though I trust Dave with my life and this is his vision, they haven't instilled a lot of faith for me in live-action Star Wars TV. Animation is still batting almost 1,000. Bad Batch had a rough start, but it's definitely in a great place now. And while this might be a wild thing to say, I truly believe that Star Wars has the lore, the characters, and the passion to put out consistent quality content like an HBO. Now, HBO is the gold standard for scripted television. I know that, and it would be almost impossible, if not impossible, for Star Wars to ever reach that height of quality. But then you see shows like Andor, and I start to question. I'm like, wait, Star Wars can be just as good as any other amazing show on television. It could be written just as well. And as someone who loves this stuff so much, I hate seeing wasted potential. And so while my high bar and expectations might lower my enjoyment of future Star Wars live-action TV, it's because I know how good this stuff can be. Andor showed the way. This is the way. And so while I know this was a very critical review of a very beloved show, and I know a lot of people probably loved this finale, and that's totally fine. And if you were listening to this and you loved the finale, that's fine. This is just my take. I enjoy critically analyzing things, especially things I love, because I feel like I truly understand Star Wars and I know the potential of this story. And it's just a bit frustrating when it doesn't achieve what I know it can. And you're always toughest on the ones you love, right? But that concludes my thoughts on the Season 3 finale of The Mandalorian. I probably have a couple more, but I think these were the most important ones before I get a little too nitpicky. I hope you enjoyed this review, even if you loved it, or if you didn't like it and you were kind of on the same boat as me. Hope this validation and reinforcement of your thoughts as well was also just as enjoyable. But as I said in the beginning, as always, thank you guys so much for listening, for the support, for reaching out, for liking the Instagram posts. It's been a lot of fun. I don't know what I'll be doing over the next couple weeks. I've been having this steady stream of content from Star Wars since Andor, so I definitely have some ideas. I'll definitely get back into Star Wars story interviews. I definitely want to do a book-related podcast because we've been talking and we've been seeing so much book lore being brought into the live-action shows. Books need to be highlighted. I want to get as many people that haven't read Star Wars books to get into Star Wars books, whether it's reading just one or a couple or becoming a book fanatic like me. That's another passion project I want to get into. Also been feeling some tier list content coming with maybe some video. I don't know. Maybe I'll get back into the video realm of showing my face again. I don't know. But it's definitely going to be an experimental next couple episodes after this. So definitely looking forward to changing up the content from reviews and thoughts. So that's really exciting. Change is always good. And then before you know it, we'll be getting Visions Season 2. Oh my God, wait, that's like right around the corner. I'm just kidding. I'll be doing reviews so soon in a couple of weeks. But yeah, before we know it, we'll have Ahsoka again. But excited to fill the next couple months with some new interesting content. So thank you as always. Follow me on Instagram at @star_wars_mark of balance. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.